nice. So today, I'm going to be talking about God's protection. And I'm going to open up with a little humor here, lighten things up a little bit. So a family arrived to church early one Sunday morning, so their little 7-year-old son walking around, ends up in the lobby. He sees a plaque on the wall with a list of names. So as he's studying it, the pastor walks over to the little boy, and the boy says, "Who are all these people on the wall?" The pastor says, "Well, those are some of our church members that died while they were in the service." The little boy thought for a moment. He said, "Was that the morning service or the evening service?" So, as you can see, I'm here. I survived my 20 years in the service, even with a few close calls working on the flight deck of a carrier. That's a whole other story. So, throughout the Old Testament, God's provided protection for quite a few people. Like, we got Noah. He had the flood. God told him, "Build an ark. This is how you build the ark. I'll provide the animals, and you will save your family from destruction." We also have Lot. He was rescued from destruction of Sodom. Angels came, seen him, told him, "Take your family, leave." He did. Moses, when he was a baby, the Pharaoh said all male babies between age, I can't remember the ages, but they will be put to death. Well, his mother put him in a basket, floated him down a stream, and God protected him. He became pretty much the savior of the Israelites while they were being slaves. And we have David and Goliath. Well, we know how that turned out. And Daniel sent to the lion's den. God, I don't know if he put the lions to sleep so their mouths shut or something, but Daniel survived. So now this, I'm going to talk about, happened to me 20 years ago while I was in the Navy. And Jonathan, he was in the Navy same time I was, and he could confirm things like this happen. So, because it happened so many years ago, and I wanted to relate the story to the Bible using passages, and I came up with 4. Even though there's only one listed, I used 4 different passages. So today, God provides us a lot of different kinds of protection. He uses different ways to protect us from physical, mental, and also spiritual harm. Like Job, God let the devil put Job to the test, to test his faith, and he never wavered. Jesus out in the desert, he was tempted by Satan a couple of times. He never wavered either. But sometimes God, he'll put angels in to help us. Sometimes he'll put other people to help us out. Sometimes he'll put an obstacle in your way. Just like you want to go this way, something happens, now you go that way. So that's different ways that he protects us. For, like Janice, God protects your ability to play a piano when you had your Parkinson's. That's amazing. David, every time you travel to and from Block Island on a boat, it may not seem like much, but I've been out there sometimes in the ocean, and waves get beating pretty bad. And then Matt, you've been protected legally from our favorite town hater. And Fred and Christine, your son, he's still recovering from his long COVID, but he's still being protected. And everybody else that's here today has been protected at least twice. You woke up, you drove here, and you arrived here safely. For me, it's more like a miracle. Margaret drove. So, he also protected our building here, our church. A lot of people here know it was put up for sale. They were going to tear it down and put up, I think, condos or something. But God provided a legal way where we still own the building, and we're here today. Amen. So the first verse I'm going to talk about is in Deuteronomy 31:6. It's on page 292 in your pew Bibles. Okay, so it says, be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid or terrified because of them. For the Lord your God goes with you. He will never leave you nor forsake you. So I'm going to be talking about them. You want to know who them is. Well, like I said before, I was in the Navy during this time. And in the back of your bulletin, there's a little flow chart to kind of help you understand who them is. So at the top, you have the commanding officer. He's the number one guy in charge. And just below that, off to the right, you see QA, that's quality assurance. That's where I was assigned at this time. And what we would do is, we're kind of like OSHA, except we don't wait to get called. We walk around and look for things. Everybody hated us, right? Yeah, we look for, make sure people are doing safe, and also, because we're working on airplanes, everything's by a book. And a lot of those directions in the book are written because somebody got hurt or died, and you're like, oh, that didn't work. Let's write it this way. And then you follow down, you'll see QA listed again just above the maintenance officer. He's the guy that's in charge of all the maintenance on all the airplanes. Well, we would inspect his department and make sure everything's going right. And then you'll see down below that there's 3 different divisions. That's your shops that do the maintenance on the aircraft. So the division I'm going to be talking about is the line division. So the line division, we like to call them the line shack because their office is in a shack outside, like a little building type thing, you know. So to become part of that little area, after boot camp, they usually go to school for about a month, learn basic aircraft things. Then they go to their squadron, and they get their on-the-job training, and that usually lasts about 6 months. And then they get qualified, become a plane captain. They get to put their name on a plane. They own that plane. The pilot borrows it. Now myself, after boot camp, I went to school for 7 months to learn how to be an aircraft electrician. After that, I went to school for 6 more months to learn the actual aircraft I'm working on. Then I went to my squadron. So I had a little more training than them guys, but they did have an important job. They inspect the aircraft, look for leaks like oil, hydraulics, fuel, loose screws. They wash the plane. Like I said, they own it. They put fuel in it, but they don't actually do any maintenance. They're not allowed. They can't fix nothing. So because they're special, you know, they're outside in their own little world. All the other shops, they have a little workspace in the hangar that they work out of. So these guys, like I said, they're special. Even on their door, there's a sign that says, you don't work in here, you don't come in here. I've seen their division officer, he's a pilot, he's in charge of their shop. He's standing outside in the rain saying, hey, send so-and-so out here, I want to talk to them. He's like, no, come on in. He's like, I ain't going in there. I'll tell you why in a minute. Just remember, nobody goes in there unless you work there. So I'm going to talk about our second verse. The first verse, I defined who them was that I'm being protected from. So on Psalm 23, 3 and 4, page 787. I'm not going to be reading all of verse 3. I'm going to start in the middle there. So he says, he guides me along the right path for his name's sake. Even though I walk through the darkest valley, I will fear no evil, for you are with me, your rod and your staff, they comfort me. So in these 2 verses, we have the right path. We also have a rod, a staff, and a valley of darkness. So later on, I'm going to talk about the right path. But for now, I'm going to talk about my valley of darkness, this line shack I have to go to. Nobody goes in there. And the rod I have is my position. I'm QA. I can go anywhere I want in that squadron and say, hey, you ain't doing that right. My staff, it's an orange folder. You want to know what an orange folder is about, I'll tell you about that. So for QA, to become a QA or quality assurance, you usually have about 8 to 10 years of naval aviation experience. And then there's a school that's a month long you go to. They teach you how to do it's a lot of paperwork also. But the orange folder, I'll talk about that in a minute. So the squadron I was in at the time, we had different color folders. Like if I want to take vacation, you submit your paperwork in a green one. If you have awards or evaluations, like a job review to submit, that's a blue folder. People become qualified for certain jobs, that paperwork's in the yellow folder. Anybody can use those folders. Only QA uses orange. That's used for audits and inspections. So I was working the night shift, and I had to work around the flights because I got to be outside while the planes are departing, make sure everybody out there is doing their job safely and correctly. So the plane left. I go to my office, grab my orange folder, my little rod, and I walk up to the door to the line shack. Here's that sign. You don't work here, you don't come in here. So I look in the window, all I see is their shift supervisor at his desk. I knock on, he's, come on in, all right. I walk in, it's like a surprise party. As soon as I walk in the door, guys are falling from the ceiling, they're coming out of lockers, coming out from behind the couch. I get tackled, my shirt gets ripped up over my head, and they start doing this thing called a pink belly. And everybody knows what that is? Everybody takes turns slapping your belly until it turns nice and red. Yeah, it's fun, human, it's harmless. But anyway, they all laugh, and they go eat their dinner, and I'm stuck there with the shift supervisor. So, will God protect them from me? So I've got a third verse I'm going to talk about. Deuteronomy 17:12. It's on page 273. It's a lot of verses than we're used to having, but they all fit the what I'm talking about. So this says, anyone who shows contempt for the judge or for the priest who stands ministering there to the Lord your God is to be put to death. Well, that's a little severe, for me anyway. So I'm not going to put anybody to death or anything, but like the verse says, the judge, the priest, that's QA. We do all that. And like I said before, I work for the CEO. He's like the Lord of the squadron, the king of the squadron. I don't know how you want to say that. But like I said, it's my turn. I'm getting even. I'm going to treat this place like Sodom and Gomorrah. I'm not going to burn it down. I'm not going to kill anybody, but they ain't going to be happy. So the audit I'm working on has 50 questions. I wrote negative on 45 of them. I said things like, oh, your floor's dirty, the windows are dirty, there's trash in the trash can. I wrote things like that up. I mean, it's extreme. And so as I was done with that, typed it all up. That's a lot of paperwork. A couple of days later, bad audits can have a severe impact on a supervisor's career. Like I said, a bad one that can affect his chances of being promoted. But I'll get to that later. Like I said, will God protect the shop supervisor, who's a good friend of mine. We had my daughter's first birthday party. This guy shows up. I don't even know who he is. But he showed up. We ended up becoming really good friends. We've been friends since then, 25 years. That's a friend I had. But so I typed it all up. I talked to him a couple of days later, said, I want you to have both your shifts, the day shift and the night shift there when I give you this audit. He's, okay. So I show up. I give him this orange folder. It's kind of heavy. Yeah. So he looks at it and what's this? What happened? Well, you told the guys I was coming in tonight, or the other night, to do the audit. And they tackled me, gave me a pink belly, this, so now he's kind of like Moses coming down from the mountain and seeing his golden calf. This audit, this orange folder, that's his golden calf. He wasn't very happy with his guys, and he said a few words, and then, so I talked to him privately, and I'm going to talk about my last verse I have, Luke 6:36. It's on page 1469 in the Pew Bibles. So it's short, but it says, "Be merciful, just as your Father is merciful." So, like I said before, I'm going to talk about the right path. I also mentioned, I was talking to my friend privately afterwards. Well, I wrote up a second audit, which I gave him, which was more accurate. It only had 5 discrepancies. And so he really liked that, and like I said, I was merciful. And whenever I went back in that little room, they never touched me. The division officer, on the other hand, he still refused to go in there. But what happened to my friend? Like I said before, a bad audit can really hurt you. But he got promoted. He got to a higher rank. We were the same before, and now he's my boss. And so, did God protect me? Well, I wasn't really injured. I said it's all fun. Nobody died, so I was protected. Did God protect my friend? Like I said before, God will send people your way to protect you. He sent me his way to protect him.